Welcome to the Serve and Return podcast. My name is Chris Trieste, and my guest tonight is Bill Patton. Bill wears a number of hats in the tennis world. He's the executive director of USA Tennis Coach. He's the author of a number of tennis books, including The Art of Coaching High School Tennis, The Athlete-Centered Coach, and Visual Training for Tennis, and more. He's a certified tennis pro, a high school coach. Bill, welcome to the program.
Nice to meet you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, it's great to have you out in California. I'm in New York. And how are things right now in California?
Well, it was 88, but it was only supposed to be 75 today. So it's fine. We're doing all right. It's
all right.
Warm than I thought it was going to be, but things are going okay around here.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're doing well, and warm weather, of course, as you might expect for California. One of the books you've written is titled Visual Training for Tennis. And that is kind of my instinct here looking at the title is that's kind of an overlooked focus as far as tennis coaches go and tennis pros go. We talk about strategy and footwork, a little bit of the mental game and sort of like fitness, those types of things. But give us a little information on that. Visual training for tennis.
Well, you know, it's really interesting because I like to ask people, what's your most important body part when it comes to playing tennis? And they name just about everything else but your eyes. But your eyes are really the most important body part because if you can't see, you can't play. I mean, there's a boy who has no legs, but he is playing tennis. I don't know if you've seen that, right? So he hops along on the court and manages to play, right? Obviously, there's wheelchair tennis. It's a different thing. But anyway, so it's the ability to see and react to the ball that is so critical to the growth of the game. Right now, I mean, one of the most important and overlooked things is that coaches don't appreciate that beginners have a hard time seeing the ball. And another major issue is that one of the barriers to moving past the 4.0 level up to 4.5 and above is that now all of a sudden the ball's coming a lot faster and it's coming with a lot of different varieties of speeds and people are out there really trying to throw you off. And if you're not visually ready for that, then it's a very difficult thing to overcome. So a very large chunk of what it takes to move beyond 4.0 is visual training.
And you mentioned a beginner, so tell us a little more about that. A beginner doesn't really see the ball or doesn't really watch the ball. What do you mean? What do they do, I guess?
Well, there's a correlation between your ability to perceive and learn and your anxiety level. So job one, when a beginner comes onto the court, is to create an atmosphere that's calm, easygoing, relaxing, reassuring, and whatnot. Because, you know, you put yourself in the mind of a person who's coming to a strange place to meet a strange person to take a lesson for the first time, and they don't even know if they can do it. They're not sure. I'm going to try tennis, but I am not sure if I'm going to succeed. I've failed at it before. So there's a lot of anxiety that goes with that. So, you know, that's really the beginning. I think a really good analogy is to remember back what it was like when you started a project at 9 o'clock at night, knowing that it was due at 8 o'clock in the morning, and how, you know, you get your books and you put them down and you look at the clock and it says 9:37 and you wonder where did 37 minutes go, right? But it wasn't that time sped up. It was that you, the person, were anxious. So then a tennis ball starts to look like a real emergency. Every ball is an emergency to a beginner.
So would a beginner overreact in some way? They're a little nervous, they're a little anxious, and it's, oh my gosh, I got to hit this ball. What do you think?
Well, and then not only that, but then when they step into a situation where now all of a sudden they have a coach who's giving them all sorts of technical advice that they then have to interpret and perform, and they're feeling a lot of pressure to perform for the coach because that's just natural, then, you know, that's sort of an anxiety increasing thing. So one thing I really like to do, I like to make sure that we have a rally within the first 10, 15 minutes on the court with people who are coming onto the court for the first time. And it's very doable. But, you know, so job one, calm the people down. I mean, one thing you can be sure of is if the person didn't plan ahead and now they're running to the lesson late and now they're got themselves worked up into a lather, it's going to be a bad lesson unless the coach intervenes and says, hey, it's all right, calm down, everything's going to be all right.
And verbally expressing that feeling that to calm down and to relax a little bit and everything's okay. We've all been at that point where we're a beginner. Any other thoughts on how to do that, maybe to calm someone down who might have this anxiety?
Sure. I mean, start with things where players can be immediately successful. So one of the most influential things for me in my career has been watching Ken DeHart at work. So Ken has players toss balls back and forth. And I used to, you know, in my younger days when I was more grandiose about how challenging, you know, things should be, you know, I kind of scoffed at that, but then I tried that out and it works pretty darn well. So, you know, the first thing that I do when I get people on the court is first find out what is their goal? What do you want out of these lessons? Because if we go into the lesson and I don't even know what they want, then how can I deliver what they want?
That's a good point. Yeah.
So, I mean, some people come out on the court and all they want to do is rally one more ball over the net. And some people come out and they would just like to not embarrass themselves in a set of social doubles. And then other people are, you know, gung-ho, and very, very few people step onto the court and say, oh yeah, I want to get ready to play USTA leagues. Now, you know, it's like, that's a very, very small group of the initial people who come out. So then once we're on the other side of the net, I'll have them touch the net, take 2 steps back, and then we will gently toss a ball back and forth 10 times.
Yeah, so you're working on the athlete, really. You're working on the athlete before you're working on the player.
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's both at the same time, I would say, because tennis is a game of catching and tossing, and that's another thing that isn't taught a lot by many programs, are receiving skills, right? Just about every other sport teaches the receiving skills first, except for tennis. We teach the sending skills. So the fact that they can catch a ball over the net means that they're preparing to play. And so then that's easy. But then also, if you're the coach, it gives you a moment to gauge how your student is mentally. Because, I mean, for some people, even that's a frantic moment.
For sure.
They get, oh no, wait, a ball's bouncing at me and I have to catch it. And what if I don't catch it, right? What if I don't catch it? Does it make me, oh no, I didn't catch it. Do I look like an idiot?
And some are very tough on themselves, or some of the comments they make, you know, are pretty harsh sometimes, right?
Yeah, and you can gauge that early on, and then you know who are you dealing with, and now you can start to really look at, how am I going to work with this person? Because it's all about the player, it's all about them. You know, I mean, maybe we'll have time to talk about athlete-centered coaching, but you know, understanding who you're working with is a very, very important piece. So then the next step that I do is I get them to hold the racket all the way up to the top of the grip. And then we take 1 step back further from the net. So now we're maybe halfway between the net and the service line. And we'll just have a nice little tiny little racket where we use the racket to catch and toss. Right now, One thing I learned from Oscar Wagner is that rack in Egyptian means palm.
What? All right. So these progressions, these logical progressions, will make the player more comfortable, have success earlier, help reduce anxiety. How about the higher level player? So now you also mentioned earlier the 4.0 player, and as they get even above that, that ball is moving. So as far as visualizing the ball, visual tennis training, what comes to mind at that level?
Yeah, first, the answer might surprise you, but no matter who I have on the court, every single player I start with, we toss the ball 10 times, and then we have a little 10-shot rally to essablish that little ability to just be able to hit a drop shot. So sometimes I get on the court, I get 4-0s or 3-5s who are a little full of themselves, and so we'll do this and we're having a little thing, and then I go and then I hit the drop shot that lands 2 feet from the corner and 2 feet from the net, and they usually go like this, and I go and I tell them, well, look, you can't stroke the ball over there. You can't hit the ball to that spot. You have to toss it over there with your hand, with your racket. So now, what have we just done? We've opened up the entire court, because a lot of 3-5, 4-0 players are locked into this idea that you have to hit the ball through people at the baseline.
Without question.
Right. So now, you have 27 or 36 feet to work with. That's all you have. 36 feet, maybe a little bit more, but now I've just opened up the entire court, and so now you have 1,900 square feet to work with, or whatever it is. I don't know what the square footage is. What's 39 times? I'm not going to do that math right now. But
yeah, that's for another time.
Yeah. But, so when players then visually look at the court as a place to not only push people back and hit the ball past them, but also to pull them forward and make space and move them around, then it's a more visually interesting game.
So you're introducing spacing and angles and manipulating parts of the court, it sounds like.
Yeah. No, absolutely, because this is what you need to do to win a tennis match. I mean, there's so many little subtle things to the strategy of the game. Sadly, I think in America, people are mainly training people to play one of two ways without a lot of variety. You have big serve, big forehand, get the point over in 3 shots, and you have get the serve in, kick serve, and grind, hit top spin shots until your fingers are down to that, right? And there's not a lot of subtlety in between, but that's kind of a digression off of the visual training topic.
So is there a exercise in particular that a player could do to improve their visual training, in addition to some of the things that we're talking about now, or what would you suggest?
I'm creating a course which I'm going to publish soon, so this is like a pre-launch activity, but I want people to get some value out of this talk for sure. There's no way we're going to exhaust all of the resources from that, but a couple of things really quick. There's this thing called bounce toss, but a lot of people call it bounce hit, and so it goes back to the 1920s. Some people believe that it started with Tim Galway and
So that was entered my mind. I just Bill, reread The Inner Game of Tennis last week.
But Fred Earle, who has passed, explained to me that tip actually comes from the 1920s. So that chip is almost 100 or more than 100 years old. So what you do is you say bounce when the ball bounces, and you say hit when it hits your strings. But I don't like the word hit anymore. I like the word toss because it's a more relaxing word. People don't tense up when they say toss. So that's, you know, if you haven't ever tried that in your life, you really ought to try that. But the interesting thing is it doesn't work with 100% of people. I've noticed that there are about 15% that just absolutely hate that. And the reason they do is because the verbal processing that it takes to say words while they're playing is not in their wheelhouse. So
it's a bit of a distraction, maybe, I wonder.
So it's a distraction because everybody has different capacity, and some people have verbal processing delay, right? So, and that explains why when you were in class or somebody was in class, there was always a kid that could raise their hands faster than everybody else, right?
Absolutely.
I remember being the kid who'd heard the answer, heard the question, knew the answer, but I just couldn't hear it fast enough to be the first one to raise my hand. But you know, so this is an example of that. But you'll find that some people are not helped by bounce toss.
So having said that, though, you did say 85% are, you would say, the majority of people.
Yes, yes. Easily 85, maybe 90% are. And for those that are not helped by that, an adaptation that I've made is to have them make a noise. So like click their tongue. So because that doesn't require the same amount of processing to say the words. So that's been an adaptation, and I've gotten the feedback from a few people. No, I just don't want to do anything like that ever again. So better put the brakes on that one. Which just brings up the point that there's a very wide range of exercises and skills, and they don't fit everybody.
Well, that makes sense, though, right? I mean, some of them will probably fit most people, but not all, because the individuals are individuals, right? They have their own preferences or ways of learning, or, you know, certain things work more successfully for some than for others.
Yeah, absolutely. So
that's good. Good stuff, Bill. So transitioning from visual training for tennis, you have another book, The Athlete-Centered Coach. Tell us more about that.
Well, first, it was an exercise in frustration at one point. So I had written the book, and it was about 80,000 words. And then I had a lengthy conversation with Scott Ford, who's a bit of a mentor to me. And during that, I had kind of an aha moment, and I realized that I had discovered the theme that needed to run through that entire book. And I just finished it, and I was ready. I was already editing it. It was getting ready to be published, and I had to put the brakes on that. So, but then I couldn't even look at it. So I put the book away for like 2 months. And then at the end of the summer, you know, I taught tennis all summer, and then I started rewriting that book. The theme of that runs through that book is doing everything in, oh, I got to fix a little something here. Okay, doing everything in the right time and space for the athlete, right? So, like, let's think of a few things that violate that. One is having kids play up in age divisions who are not developmentally ready for that. That is a mistake, right? Some kids are ready to play up. Many are not. Another one would be the use of performance-enhancing drugs, right? Which is not an appropriate thing to do in any time and space. But what sports are sometimes requiring that if you want to play at a certain level. I mean, like, look at bicycling, right? I mean, it was like,
sure,
you had to if you wanted to be competitive because everybody was doing it, right? So anyway, somewhere along the way, we lost our way. But now if we take that theme and we say, okay, here I am coaching a 6-year-old, right? What's appropriate for a 6-year-old, right? What is it on their timeline? I exist on their timeline. They don't exist on my timeline. How do I fit into where they are? Because you also have coaches who take their big cookie cutter and they just treat everybody the same way, and it's not appropriate.
It's not appropriate. I'm shaking my head yes as you're saying that, because some coaches, it's a cookie cutter approach, you're right, where they expect the athlete to totally adjust to them, to the coach, as opposed to what you're saying, the coach is customizing the experience for the athlete.
Okay, but what you just said something really good, because sometimes what the player needs is to learn how to adjust to the coach.
Oh, sure. It's not, yeah, absolutely.
I can be absolutely a bully and a tyrant on the court, and part of that is life skills, because you're, when you grow up, you might have a tyrant as a boss. So
yeah,
I'm preparing you for dealing with a future tyrant. I mean,
yeah, but you know what? I get what you're saying, Bill. I sometimes have a little trouble with that, because I've had coaches, I've heard teachers say, if you point out that it's not fair, that's maybe not the best way to do it. They say life is not fair. They've got to learn that. But I think people already know that. Kids know life is not fair. We don't have to make it even more so just to teach them a lesson.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't major in that.
I got you.
And sometimes helping a kid or a family even learn how to step outside their comfort zone when it comes to really truly being a serious athlete feels like tyranny. It might not be real tyranny, but it can feel that way. And so I get you. There's a tension to it, but I consider myself to be a very player-friendly coach, in that the way I deal with discipline is very personalized. So I try to discover who that kid is, and what are their goals, and what are they trying to achieve right now, and how much have they thought about their own behavior. Because sometimes they just don't realize that that's a maladaptive behavior that they're exhibiting, and they don't even know why they're doing it.
No, that is all true. And I think one of the tricks is to hold people accountable, to have high standards, to be demanding, but to not be demeaning. That kind of balance.
Oh yeah, no, that's a good line to draw. All right, because what's the point of being demeaning? I mean, yeah, what? So yeah, I mean, some people take it too far, and they think, yes, if I insult this person to their core, right, that will make them stronger. No, that will make them damaged, is what that will do. So yeah, I'm glad we went a little longer on that, but there's always a difference between perception and reality. So
that's true too.
No matter what I do, I might have the greatest intentions for all of my players, but I'm going to have a handful who think I'm the biggest jerk on the planet. So,
yeah, that will happen. That will happen. Do you, so the athlete-centered coach, give us another lesson or two as far as what that means again, as opposed to so what would be the opposite of a athlete-centered coach, I guess?
A coach-centered coach.
Right.
So yeah, when coaches are too much involved in their own ego, right? When they look at children and teenagers and young adults as an ends to a means to an end, right? So, in college football especially, there's a really strong concept of fresh red meat. They get a big mound of fresh red meat out there, and they pound them to death, and the idea is to advance the pigskin down the fields to score touchdowns, to bring glory to the name of the coach and the university, right? And I mean, like, I had a really interesting talk with a guy who not only was a tennis player, but also a third string linebacker at a school where the first stringer was a future NFL prospect and turned out to be a star. And so every day in the meeting room, wherever he sat, my friend, the star player came to displace him and saying, I sit there.
Oh boy.
And so every meeting, he had to get up out of his chair to let the star player bully him on a daily basis. And he went to the coaches, and the coaches, you know, pretty much acknowledged, hey, you know what? You should just be lucky you're on this team and that you might see the field. Don't start a problem with him. Look where he's going to the pros. Where are you going? So there's this, I mean, so now we're getting out of the tennis area, but I mean, the athlete-centered coach is about all sports. Now, here's another crazy one. This one makes me upset. All right. So imagine you're a coach and you just sent one of your players to go see the team doctor, right? And they come back and they're upset, right? But you don't notice it. You don't notice that they're upset. And so then, you know, it's business as usual. How's your injury? Blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm only focused on you as your output. How's your injury? Because we have to take care of the injury, because if you're injured, and then you can't perform. Right?
And so you're ignoring or oblivious to the person themselves, how they're feeling.
Right. And that's the story of the U.S. women's gymnastics team.
Oh gosh.
Coaches and parents sent their daughters to a doctor that was abusing them, and they either didn't notice or they turned a blind eye because it was in the interest of going for the gold. So, you know, that stuff makes me furious.
Oh, that's a horrible story.
When I'm coaching, I'm paying attention to my players, right? So, let me tell you a quick story. All right. So I took over coaching at an inner city school, and the kids didn't love me. I mean, we got along okay, but it was a little difficult at first. And so all of a sudden, I had this girl come in, and we get eye contact, and she's just giving me the stink eye, right? And I'm like, what's going on here, right? So then, you know, I'm coaching her, but I'm noticing that something's wrong. So I said something to her, and she snapped back at me, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to let this one rest. So I pulled her out of the drill, and I get her over there where nobody can overhear what we're saying, because that's another.
That's
really
good too.
Thing.
Yeah.
I want to preserve her dignity.
Correct.
Nobody gets to listen on this. We're not doing this as an attention thing. It's not
you're right.
a power play.
It could be
my part.
Cause embarrassment, or could escalate. Right.
Or, yeah, I'm not calling her out in front of everybody, right? Mm-hmm. So come on over here. So I'm like, hey, are we okay? Right? I mean, do we get along? Because right now, I mean, I saw how you looked at me, and I heard how you talked back, right? And I'm like, you know, I care. I care about the fact that we can get along. So what's going on, right? And she said, oh no, sorry, I'm having a bad day. I'm having a really bad day. I'm like, okay, well, I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, do you need to take a walk or something? You want to leave practice for a little bit and go get your mind right? You want to go use the restroom, you know, and just reset and come at it fresh? Because I care more about you, the person,
than the athlete.
Yeah, Amy, the person, is more important to me than Amy, the tennis player.
And the Amy cannot function as an effective athlete if there's something as a person that's really not right or bothering her.
That's a great point. I mean, they say, and this is very general, that boys have to perform well to feel good about themselves, and girls need to feel good about themselves to perform well.
Well said. Yeah.
Well, that's not my quote, but
it's all right.
I think it's very general. I mean, it's not always, but now the interesting thing there was that Amy then went on to be the most improved player I've ever seen in a 2-week period of time. She went from being the number 2 player on the last place team to winning the second division championship.
Wow. That's something else. That's awesome.
So he climbed over 8 players in ability in 2 weeks' time as the culmination of this relationship that had been built. And it all started that one day I pulled her aside and checked in with her. So notice what's going on with your athletes and be a person who really cares, because especially with teenagers, they're really trying to establish their own identity, and they're definitely not going to talk to their parents.
Yeah, some good points there, Bill, and some great examples of being how to be an athlete-centered coach, as opposed to, as you said earlier, a coach-centered coach or an athlete-oblivious coach, right? So you have a lot of books that you've written, a lot of titles here as I reviewed your Amazon page. One more that I'd like to talk a little bit about, or topics related to this book, is the book you have titled The Art of Coaching High School Tennis. So high school tennis, to me, is a place where there's so many players, and we want to develop those players and get them to be lifelong players. And you have the whole gamut of players who are high-level juniors, some of them still playing high school tennis, to recreational players, to players who just pick up the racket for the first time and say, hey, I want to play tennis. So what are some of the things you learned as you were writing that book, The Art of Coaching High School Tennis, or some of the things, a couple of points that you'd like to convey regarding that?
Yeah, I mean, well, part of the reason why I wrote the book was because before that was written, there really wasn't much out there for a high school coach.
Plus, yeah, sorry to interrupt, but plus, the high school coaches can range from high-level, very competent coaches or former players to people who just, hey, the high school needs a coach. Somebody do this, please. And it could be just a well-meaning person who doesn't know much about tennis. So sorry, go on.
No, that's good. And so, so the book is an A to Z book. It's written for the math teacher that just got told yesterday that they're coaching the team tomorrow.
Right.
And so, if they read that book on the weekend, then they're not going to fall flat on their face on Monday. And it's also has a lot of elements for people who've been doing it, but they're frustrated. They don't feel like they're doing it very well. And I've got a lot of comments in the reviews from people who've been coaching 20, 25, 30 years, and they sort of got in a rut and they changed their ways because they realized, oh, wait, I've been doing something that was sort of mindless. I wasn't really thinking about what I was doing. And now I realize, oh, there's a better way. So then they made that change. And I think that's really admirable. So it really is an A to Z. It's everything that you wouldn't necessarily think of on your own about how to coach a high school tennis team, which is also so unique because here you have an individual sport being turned into a team sport. And then, high school sports have a hierarchy, and tennis is very near the bottom, right, of all of that. And so you have to be able to deal with those issues, and then it's how do you build a team? That was actually originally published by, I had someone publish that for me, and my publisher actually came back to me and said, I think you've told too many bad stories of times you failed. So you have to whittle that back a little bit. But so there's some stories in there of times I failed, and then there are some stories of successes, and it's mostly all the kids' successes. I mean, it's fun to be there and facilitating their success and then realizing that that's what they did. The other thing that I think that empowers that book is that I've done it all. I've had high-performing teams that won major championships, and I've had middle-of-the-road teams that were just trying to be a winning team instead of a losing team. And like one of my schools, we won the first league title in 26 years. And then I've had a couple of teams that were rock bottom. At one school, we snapped the girls' 71 match losing streak and the boys' 37 match losing streak.
Could you imagine? Well, you know what? All those stories, or all those different levels you coached at, from the high-performing high school to the middle-of-the-road high school team to the team that's trying to snap these lengthy losing streaks, they're all rewarding in different ways, right?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, and those girls that snapped the 71 match losing streak, they jumped around like they won the World Series. I mean, I was like, oh, hey, it was one match. All right, just can you calm down a little bit?
Yeah, but it meant a lot, right?
That was major. I mean, 6 graduating classes had come and gone without a single victory.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, Bill, as we talked before we recorded, I said I feel like we could probably talk for hours, but I try to keep this to a certain amount of time. So as we wrap up here, I appreciate everything we talked about, and I'm very impressed with your experience, all the titles, the books you've written, your experience as a teaching pro, USPTA elite professional, I saw, and coaching high school. And so anyway, as we wrap up, where could people find you? Where would you recommend they look, either on Twitter or on the internet?
You can find me on Facebook. That's really easy. Bill Patton, and I am pretty recognizable there. You'll see my picture. And then on Twitter, I'm at coach_author, and Instagram at Bill Patton 720. And if you want to shoot me an email, go to do 720degreecoaching@gmail.com. 720degree-coaching spelled out @gmail.com. And I'm going to be launching an online course on visual training for tennis. It's over 2 hours long. It's like 30 videos that are anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes long. And it's just jam-packed with information. So, the most is I'm also going to be creating a certification that comes with that, but it's not going to cost an arm and a leg. I just want people to take it and get it, and then also be affirmed for being knowledgeable in that area, because it's so vital for the growth of the sport for people to understand the visual, because that's going to help more beginners stick with it and more people matriculate up to 4 or 5.
Sounds very good, Bill. Thanks so much for sharing all of this information. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, to meet you, and let's keep in touch.
All right. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity. Yes,
thank
absolutely.
you, Bill.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.